This episode is brought to you by Struzy Golf. Hey coaches out there, what I'm about to share with you is for the 1% who are ready to finally take their business to the next level. If you're ready to grow and evolve as a business owner, keep listening. I'm a coach just like you. I want more time to invest in my players, build my skills, and spend it with my family. We also both struggle with the idea of taking time off and sacrificing revenue. Coaches like us need tools to save time, automate admin tasks, and deliver excellent player experiences every single time. What if I told you there is a platform that captures 37% net new revenue in the first 60 days? It only takes 5 minutes to set up, and a simple copy-paste puts the rest on autopilot. As a founder and CEO of your business, you would fire yourself for not taking advantage of this value. Download a Struzy right now and start the journey to modernizing your business. Oh, and when you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk, that little star thing on your keyboard, to your last name so they know the guru sent you. If you aren't convinced just yet, keep listening to learn more. Now let's get back to the show.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1, no touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 149 of the Golf Guru Show. I am your host, Jason Sutton, and I'm the guru. Also the director of instruction at the beautiful Colleton River Club in Bluffton, South Carolina, where it is my mission to break down high performers in the teaching and coaching business in all fields of study, unpack and tease out what makes them great and successful. All I ask is that you make sure that you download this episode and hit that purple subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes that will be coming your way. Also, all I ask is that you share the podcast on social and with other coaches and players that might benefit from the information. My guest this week is my good friend, Shawn Koch. Shawn is the director of instruction at the Atlanta Athletic Club and is a fantastic young coach and just an overall great guy. He is on the Golf Digest Best in State list for Georgia and also on the Top 100 Teachers to Watch list by Golf Magazine, and no doubt will be on that list very, very soon. In this conversation, we talk about not only instruction, but also wedges and putter design technology, as Shawn is one of the most knowledgeable guys that I know in this area, which is why he is such a well-rounded coach. We also talk about his all-inspiring daily habits and self-development ideas that I need to start taking part in. Then he also turns the pod around on me and asks me for advice on how to coach and parent an aspiring junior golfer, which is his son, which I've got a lot of take on and hopefully helps you guys out a little bit and gives you a little insight into me and my son's work over the years. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this one, as I was taking notes the whole time and learned a ton from this wide-ranging combo. So without further ado, here is Shawn Koch and myself. Enjoy. Shawn, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. I've been looking forward to this, and it's great to catch up with you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And we've known each other for a couple of years, and you've just kind of been an inspiration with kind of evolving as an instructor and taking on this podcast. So I think I remember hearing your first one. And so this is really cool to kind of be a part of it. Neat seeing your journey.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's come a long way. Hopefully it's a little bit better than the first few. But yeah, we've spent some time together. We've known each other for several years and done some seminars together. But for those that don't know your journey, kind of take us back to the beginning. Like, where did you grow up?
Good question. And I grew up in a small town in rural Michigan, probably about 20 minutes away from East Lansing. I'm a big Michigan State Sparty fan, still am. So I'm not proud of that right now, but go Sparty though. We're waiting for basketball season. But anyway, my father was he's a life member of the PGA, and it's a great story there. He kind of guided me through golf, and I was pretty decent as a junior, and then find myself at a crossroads. Either I was going to go play golf at Michigan State, which I didn't want to do, and I ended up going to East Tennessee State, which is still the best golf school no one's ever heard of.
They're really good.
They're really good. We were ranked number 1 in the country my freshman year, and we really played. We had some, an all-star cast there. I played competitively, kind of had a decent amateur career, and then I wanted to do like every other young 21-year-old, let's go try to make it on tour with no money. And had an opportunity for a few years to do that, and then ran into an unbelievable opportunity at the Country Club South in 2004 where I could kind of dig into becoming a teacher. And, it was like a 1-year contract there, and I ended up parlaying that into 17 years. So, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with coaching, teaching. Was a pretty decent competitor at the time. So I was able to kind of fill all those boxes. Like I can fill my golf performance box. I can fill in my teacher box. I can start a family. I'm not traveling. And then you realize golf is really not fulfilling anymore. Competitiveness is just not in me anymore. And I want to be the best teacher I can be. And you put your head down and you start kind of looking, what do I believe in? What do I want to do? And who do I want to become as a coach? And I just lay down some foundational pieces and kind of come up with something that I'm still kind of coaching a little bit. The entire game, the mind, the body, everything that you can become a better player. That's kind of what I coach.
You're still quite a player, eh? You won the ATL Open like a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, that was pre-kids. So I got I got a 15-year-old that I'm having driving around, and she's driving me around really with the permit. I got a 12-year-old as well. So Phoebe and Jack, they keep me busy. And my expectation as a golfer right now are just so out of reach. I feel like when I tee up, I'm my former self, and I'm really not. I can tell people some psychological stuff about like how bad I am as a golfer now, but I can still swing it. I can still hit it pretty decent. But from a playing standpoint, it's kind of just not in me.
I reached out to a mutual friend, Mr. Tattersall, and I said, tell me about Shawn, because I was like trying to get some insight. First thing he said was great player.
John's awesome, and we've played a lot of golf together. And you still have those innate skill sets, right? There's times where you hit some solid shots and your players go, how'd you do that? I'm like, a lot of balls. I've hit a lot of golf balls, and I can explain it, but the execution part is just time. That's all I can ask for my players to do is just put in the time.
Yeah, they don't get it. I can still hit it like pretty good for a guy that never practices, and I was never even at your level probably, but I can get it around. And they're, like, oh, you make it look so easy. I'm like, it's not easy. Like, this is that a culmination of thousands and thousands of balls when we were like trying to get good and trying to play the tour and all that stuff. It's like they don't understand like the time it took to be able to like hit it pretty good without practice and teaching 8 hours a day.
Right. And you help someone, you're like, oh, I like that. Let me try that. With the blessing of our social media guru of Joe Mayo talking about angle attack, I wonder how many instructors like, oh, I got to do it now. I got to go get this AOA, as steep as possible, and let's see what I can do. And I'm sure everyone's messing around with it, but you can just say, hey, watch this.
I just talked to Joe last week. You teach a lot of good players like I do, and I'm sure you're using TrackMan or something. What kind of numbers are your guys producing for like 30-yard shots, just like little shots around the green?
We're probably at most 6, maybe 7, 11 down. I haven't seen a good shot 11 down, but again, turf conditions. We're talking membership conditions, not PJ Tour, down grain. There's just certain things, elements there that might be skewed, if you will. The first thing, I just had a really good short game lesson today, and the first thing I told the player, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to teach you anything other than low point and loft direction, like where the loft needs to be pointing for you to hit a certain shot, and then where the low point is. And then we played around with certain lies, and I talked to him about swing direction, and he just like, oh, wow. Not to try to get into other aspects of it, but the guy was kind of, a lot of handle dragging and a lot of shaft lean. Especially, and it down in Hilton, at end of the green, Bermuda grass. How many guys just duff it? And there's just an excessive amount of forward lean and the pelvis drops, and you just got to kind of change their approach. And hopefully you're trying to get their swing direction a little bit more left with an open face so that that toe can actually touch the ball opposed to the heel or, the sole, the middle of the club.
Yeah, I think from what me and Joe talked about, we sort of agree on, like, forward shaft lean it's not a bad thing. Well, I've spent a lot of time with James Ridyard. Shout out to James, has taught me like tremendous amount about short game. It's controlling the arc height, right? It's like, just because the club's coming down towards the ground doesn't mean it has to take a huge divot. It's like teaching them how to get the arc height reasonably consistent or level-ish. That's how they don't take the divot. That's the difficult part with the average golfer. That's more pivot and using the ground and stuff like that I teach.
And they're not paying attention to the total hand path. Like, where's the hands actually traveling?
Yeah, there's a lot of little pieces that's he's not describing, which I clearly got to go pay for that. You got to pay for that. Pantheon, yeah. It's not just about getting steep. I got a lot of people get steep and it doesn't work out so well. But more about good players. But yeah, more good players can get too shallow and then not be able to control that launch of that, what I would call the magic 30.
We learned that like when TrackMan first came out, like if you can launch it under 30, you're hitting stellar shots. That's how wedge designers changed everything. I mean, they just changed the center of gravity much higher because guys wanted to hit it lower. And so like, well, if we hit it below the center of gravity, we'll create a higher spin rate. And so all of a sudden you've got the player really changing the way wedge design has evolved. And so now CG is so much higher on the face with most of these wedges that a low strike is kind of the goal.
Yeah, 100%. I tell people that all the time is like the farther away from the CG the strike is, the better. That's why Vokey moved his up closer to the top of the club head. Are you still with Mizuno?
No, I partner up with TaylorMade.
Okay. So, I mean, it's the same. Everybody's got great technology, right? But I mean, that's such a huge deal. And we're going to get into that because I know you're just an expert in.
Well, yeah, I still have a great relationship with Mizuno. I mean, they were like a family to me. So, I mean, I still call the engineers there. I mean, I work out with Chris Vauchel, and we try not to talk golf, but we end up talking a lot about equipment and a lot about design and all kinds of stuff. That's one of the greatest evolutions that the wedge has evolved with the player. So changing the CG and the stylistic players that, hey, we need this, like the high toe. The high toe is origined by, like, it was really the Ping I2, right? And Mickelson's using it and influenced Roger Cleveland to make Callaway wedge there with the full toe. And I don't know, high toe, and it's high toe, it's full face. Every company's got, grooves on the toe now. Well, majority of them.
How important are grooves? Let's dig into wedges. We can start there and share with us technology that you've learned and then how that affects how we're teaching now. Because I know what I'm seeing, and I don't know as much about the club equipment part of it as you do, but it'd be interesting to know how those two marry together.
Well, obviously deeper grooves at let's say 1, 2, 3, and 4, as it goes up, shallower, because we want the debris to kind of separate itself from the golf ball. So that deeper grooves, 1, 2, or 3, and that's where we're going to get really clean strikes. And then it can climb up the face and hit the shallower grooves or the wider groove. But we're talking multi-millimeters of the groove depth and the width. I think in between the grooves, the surface is actually more important than the groove depth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is that where the friction comes from, do you think, more than?
Absolutely. I remember my father who, he would always tell me, he goes, hey, when you hit it in the bunker, do not clean your wedge. Keep the sand on it. And I'm like, why is that? Oh, wait till you see it spin. This is a 1970 player, he's sands about type of golfer, and he learned some tricks of the trade. And he's like, oh yeah, you got to keep the sand on it. You just were blown away that sand created so much friction on the golf ball that caused it to spin a ton. And I think that's where you see it. I'm more of an advocate of where the milling is in between the grooves and the groove depth. And so I think that's where the raw wedges become really popular, but they don't last long. Having Mizuno kind of being a part of it, they were pretty adamant that a plated wedge will last longer, because once the plating is off, now you go to the raw groove. And that's exactly where you want it to be. So when you have a raw wedge, it's not going to last as long, and you're not going to get ideal spin rate after 75 rounds. I think that's what Titleist says. I think those raw wedges, I think they're fashionable, but I think you just got to be aware of how many times you're actually hitting that wedge.
Yeah, and tour players get to change their wedges like more often. Right?
And think about the cover of the golf ball they're using. Their data is really skewed to that golf ball too. I mean, our range is NXT Tour golf balls. I mean, that's a very firm cover, smashing into the grooves. I mean, and it's just a matter of time before those grooves wear out, especially even if it's off mats or off of decent grass. I mean, wedges are just, I know they're very personable, but like, I mean, there's so many different wedges out there for so many players. I mean, if you struggle with any sort of performance wedge, you might not want to play. I mean, if you're struggling with wedge around the greens, you need to probably look at some more game improvement stuff. I know Cleveland's got some really good stuff out there. The Sure Shot, the Wider Sole, maybe that's Callaway, but I just think most players are most members around the greens really just are not properly fitted and properly understand how to hit a certain shot around the green, but they're willing to get a tour wedge, if you will. I love seeing guys with the latest and greatest raw Vokey wedge tee grind. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's got no bounce on it, though.
Right.
I got some of my juniors that got those because JT's got it. And they're like, all right, but now we're sticking it in the ground.
Right. And do you know how to use this? You know, this is what we do. Okay. It's great. I mean, obviously, that's where you have to be a decent coach, if you will, rather than an instructor. You got to kind of persuade them to kind of buy into the fact that this is not a good wedge. And I think that's something that a really good coach does, because we have a membership we have to address. We want them to perform better. We want them to do well. And sometimes they're just not in the best equipment, and yet we have to tell them to buy this wedge. And how we go about doing it, it really takes either an enormous amount of convincing and persuasion, or you just tell them this is a matter of life and death. This is like, if you want to get better, like you wouldn't go to a doctor and he gives you a prescription, you're like, I don't think I'm going to fill it. I'm going to just watch my sodium intake. Yeah. Like, no, you have to do this. Yeah, this is the cost, but it's like a prescription drug. Like, we have to do our job. We can't just like, oh, well, I'll wait till that thing just wears out and we'll get them new wedges.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's move on to putting. All right. So I think, would you say this is your sort of expertise as far as fitting? Like, you're kind of a nerd with all this stuff with the putting, right? I mean, talk about your background. You were with Bettinardi. You spent a lot of time with those guys, and like, just give us a little background. And then I would love to get into some great questions of just what do you think? Yeah, I mean, not just putting instruction, which, you know, I'm a decent putting instructor, but...
Oh, yeah, you're more than decent, brother.
We've got a connection that you don't even realize, or you probably already realized. Yeah, I think the equipment part is like crucial. So give us a little background on that.
So, and again, it goes back to my Mizuno relationship. They partner up with Bettinardi from 06 to 09. And at the time, like, I was pretty involved with all their fittings and their design, not really fittings. And they didn't really have a design team. It was very, you know, hey, this is for a strong arc. This is for a straight back and straight through, which that's just kind of like 2-ply toilet paper. You know, I mean, it's just like, I don't know.
The Ping app. Sorry, Ping.
I don't know what I am. And they had guidelines and they try to stay in their portfolio. This is what we want to present. But yet, like, hey, what are you guys doing with different weights? What are you guys doing with different shafts? And, you know, with Mizuno came in and they would have True Temper. And I'm like, have you guys ever talked about shaft flex and putters? I'm like, that's ridiculous. And now you see these stability shafts, you see LA Golf, you see all kinds of different shafts. And not to say I was a part of it, but like, I used to kind of take apart putters, and I would do a Dynamic Gold R300 5-iron shaft in all my putters, because, you know, you raise the little bit of where the bending profile on the shaft is just by 34 inches, and you could feel a lot more of the head weight. And then if you can feel the head weight, then you can actually feel tempo and rhythm. I was really nerdy at the time, and then I got the Science in Motion. And I just was like, okay, let me play with this and let me see if I have any sort of validity at all. And I was building putters, putting all kinds of stuff in and trying to do these blind tests with members. And they would come in. It was the same putter. It was just your standard plumber's neck with no sight line, just your traditional pocket, whatever, Newport answer. You can see that image. And I had multiple different shafts in each one of them, and I had different weights, and I wanted to see what the outcomes would be. And all of a sudden, it's kind of cool. You saw some different patterns.
What did you notice?
Obviously acceleration rates were largely different. When you've got players that felt more head weight, they would start to fan the putter more through impact. And then when they didn't feel the head weight, they would slow the putter down a little bit. And I think you might have coined it, because I heard you called this, and I've always used it. So I appreciate you calling the word coasting, like having the putter coast through impact, not rush through impact or not hurry through impact. And I still use that verbiage. And that's when you start to find like, oh, wow, this person might have a little faster rhythm. So when you're looking at those rhythms on Science of Motion, you're like, okay, how can I slow this person down? I'm going to actually take the head weight away from them. It's actually going to slow them down. If the head weight was heavier, then they would actually feel it and then they would speed it up.
Opposite of what most people would think, right? It's kind of that whole, should I have a heavy putter or a light putter on fast or slow greens? We get that question a lot, right?
Right. And most people, I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like what your tempo is, right? I think slower tempos can benefit from heavier putters. And I think faster tempos can greatly benefit from lighter putters. And if you look at and the old ping answers that we grew up with, those were like C9 swing weights. And the head weights were only maybe 330, if that. I mean, they were super light and the shafts were super stiff. And they were really good putters back then.
Yeah, I putted with that in college.
Everyone did. And they loved the way it felt, and it was easy, and their distance control was good. And if we realize that proximity to the hole is so important, and that first attempt is so important to get it close to the hole, then why aren't we paying attention to that? And time and I see junior golfers putting 3-footers. I mean, it's just exhausting. And I think it's fine, but if you're going to work on technique, and that's what your process is, then take away the objective, take away the hole. Go indoors and work on technique. Go work on a video mat, be at home. Go on a baseboard in your house and work on technique. But isolate the outcome, because once you start seeing that ball go in, you're not going to be thinking about your technique. That's kind of the training part. But from the nerdy standpoint of putters, anytime I do a putter fitting, the first thing I tell them is number one thing is that it's an alignment tool. Anything other than that, you're just not telling the truth. So first and foremost, can you line this tool up? Can you align the putter up? And each putter has a different hosel configuration, which changes the alignment of the putter. And I don't think people are aware of that, oh, this putter, I like the way it looks. Okay, well, why? Well, because it's got prongs on the back. And most of my members, they like the putters that have deep pockets so they can pick up the ball. I think that's what I'm dealing with. Like,
scoop up the 3-footer.
I need to scoop it up. I'm like, why are you scooping up the ball? Everything should be made.
Because I learned a lot from like David Adele and David Orr back in the day when they did all that research on head shapes and lines, no lines, and hosels. Does that still kind of hold true in your research? People go against the grain. I mean, I get it. I'm just saying it's a great template as far as like a start point if you're going to fit putters. But I've seen people flip, where they should be right aim bias and they're left. But I mean, obviously that could go back to instruction.
We can go back to how, Mike Shannon used to call it linear and nonlinear, right? Do you see a line? Do you not see a line, right? And so it typically when that putter has how it's shaped, like a Newport 2, which is very square. Benton already has a BB8 wide. Every bumper is really, the geometry is very straight and it's perpendicular. This is a great putter for people that are right bias aimers. And so it's a left aim bias, and whether or not it's a plumber's neck or not has nothing to do with arc shape. Anytime you have any sort of tilted axis, it's going to put on an arc. So, when we see Lucas Glover putt really well with this lap golf, the thing's perpendicular. He's reduced any sort of arc, and it's not anything of torque. I just think that he's reducing the arc and he's allowing the putter to actually swing very linear to his alignment. So, I think that's a great style of putting, because the other methods that he was using, it was troubling him. And I don't know if that's physiologically with his hands.
I was going to say, I think there's some neurological stuff going on there that has nothing to do with the putter, in my opinion.
Right. But he found something, and kudos to him.
He got farther away from the ground with where his hands are. And where his eyes are and how they like kind of train himself to do what he's going to try to do.
Ideally, we just reduce how much the sweet spot is traveling, right? Because it's so perpendicular that the sweet spot's not traveling off the baseline as much as it could, right? It's very upright to your standard putter. I have those preferences. I like guys in more ulnar, if you will, with their lead hand, if they're conventional putters, even if they're left hand low or lead hand low, just so that they can understand that when the lead wrist is in a little more ulnar condition, you're kind of adding and subtracting loft. You're not really changing face direction. So when you get the hand a little more radial, then you can see that there's more arc shape. So yeah, that goes into grip. What kind of grip do I want them to be? Do I want them in the piston grip? Do I want them to be in a much more square back grip? You know, and then you get into, those are filling my preferences. I don't want to say this is a law, but I mean, they're my preferences of like, okay, well, this putting style, this putting grip, these are all the matchups that I've kind of found to be pretty good to help players out.
No, we all have preferences. I talk about that all the time on the show, or just when I'm doing workshops. I'm like, yeah, we don't have a model. Like, you know, our players might look a little different here and there, but I would say we could probably make a bigger list of what we don't want to see, right? Of things that don't work, you know, and then you're like, okay, well, what are our preferences stemmed from? It's continued success, seeing something.
I mean, obviously, can I get the ball started on line? Can I line this putter up and can I make solid contact? And then after that, can I actually hit it with the same rhythm and rate on a regular basis from 3 feet to 25 feet to 30 feet to where these outliers are? And if I can do that, then I've got a good fit. Obviously, I give players like, here's a crescent neck or here's this little flow neck that you can use and you can have any choice you want to. Here's 1,000 different putters I'm fine with. And that goes back to the hosel configuration of the Adele model, changing the hosel shape and changing that for our alignment. But, you know, I think there's some biases that we already have before we putt. Now, how we aim it, how we see it, where that ball position is, how we line up. I mean, people who have terrible posture, their hip joints are out of line, their spine's tilted back, like, we got to correct that so you can actually see a decent line.
What's your preference on eye position for alignment?
I like it on the shaft. I know that sounds like, I don't like it on the ball. I like it on the shaft. I want people to swing the plane. I say that a lot, not necessarily swing the head, but I want them to realize, like, I want you to stare and look at your shaft plane and see if you can make the plane go back and forth. And so if their eyes can be on the hosel, so a double bend, it's on the top of the crown. If it's a plumber's neck, it's right below the shaft. So it's a lot more inside than most people would ever coach.
I think that's great. I like inside the ball, but I don't mind it more inside the ball. I really like that description. I've never thought of it that way. I mean, I've had other reasons why I don't like it on top of the ball, like getting trapped or getting too stuck. Or why do we teach that? Because we've found that our players aim it better if they're not on top of the golf ball, right? I mean, it's just, that's a cool way to look at it. I'm going to get into one of your students here in a little bit that you posted on Instagram, which I thought was really interesting. I get the question about eye dominance all the time. Like, have you found any correlation with eye dominance? I've not seen a paper or a research project that has like steered me in one direction or another to figure out whether eye dominance really means a lot. But you mentioned it in this description of your player. So what have you found in that realm?
Yeah, I think when they're left eye dominant, nothing behind the sweet spot should be of distraction. So anybody who is really left eye or the opposite hand dominant. So if you're right-handed, you're left eye dominant. If you're left-handed, you're right eye dominant. I think center shafted putters are brilliant.
Those players tend to be more left aimers?
Yeah, they would be more left aimers.
So a center shafted putter would be more of a right aim bias, which would help them.
Exactly. And then kind of think about where they predispose, where their head and their eyes are. You're not going to have them go more forward nor back, right? The fact that most of us are right eye dominant will have different neck tilts to kind of see that line. And then we're always looking more forward. So putters that have more interference, if you will, behind the sweet spot typically attract a skewed bias, right? So if I have a right aimer, I don't mind putting them into a square putter. solely because their eyes are going to be more focused on the back of the putter rather than the leading edge. And so that's anything non-offset. So a double bend, I don't want to say toe up putter, if they even exist, but those putters are great for left eye. But like center shafted putters are brilliant for left eye dominant putters. I wouldn't go if it's a Seymour putter that isn't really 100% center shafted, but something like that has nothing to interfere with just leading edge and golf ball, then I'm okay with.
Sort of collaborated unknowingly with a player lately. So we won't mention her name, but like an LPGA player that I help.
I put two and two together a little bit.
Did he not tell you who it was?
No.
Yeah. So Tim Cook, our good friend, reached out to you, which was brilliant. Like we had sort of a problem, mental, neurological, whatever we want to call it. But you were brilliant in like solving the problem with, we can give him a plug with OptiVibe putter optimization. We're not going to mention the name, but talk me through the process of when he reached out to you. Like, why did you think of that? I learned a lot from that little exchange.
For starters, we had a conflict on certain head weights with putters, and he was wanting to build a putter from a manufacturer, and he wanted to take the head weights out, and he wanted to make the putter lighter. He wanted a counterbalance, and she's better at long distance with this putter, but terrible at shorter distance. And it was like she needed two putters, right? And they were trying to kind of Frankenstein, like, how can we make one putter? And I'm like, well, really, and going back to what I said earlier, really, she's experiencing a lighter putter head, but you don't want to change that. You want to change how it's moving. And if you change where the mass is, the center of the mass of the whole putter, with this OptiVibe, which is this like...
Yeah, describe what it is. I was like, this is crazy. I've not heard anything like this since Adele like started putting weights in like the shaft.
Yeah, and again, going back to my father, he used to put bullets in the back.
I used to put sand in my grip because I saw Scott Verplank do it years ago. I had no idea why I was doing it.
I did. I mean, we're from the same cloth. As soon as I saw Scott Verplank wrap his putter with athletic tape, I don't know why, but man, this is cool. Scott, an amateur just won the Buick Open. I'm doing it, or Western Open, or whatever it was, circa 80 something. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of get her to experience when she swung the putter, it felt lighter to her. And so what I want to do is remove the weight of the putter up through the shaft. And so this thing is about, I don't know which one they put in, but they range from probably 5 inches to like 1 inch. And both ends have these little foam expanders, and you just shove it into the shaft where you want to, and then you twist it, and then it expands itself so it stays pretty solid in the shaft. And it basically gives a response to the player that they're either swinging the grip or they're swinging the head. And for her, I felt, based upon the descriptions, when she got closer to the putter, because her rhythm was probably a lot slower, she liked the heavier putter. When she got further, the heavier putter felt like a tank, and she couldn't get it online. And so if I took away the weight when it was faster, such as just changing the weight in the feel, then she could get the feeling of that, oh, this is a lighter putter head. It was just kind of one of those things that a couple of bottled wines and a Sam Putt lab, nothing to do.
It was amazing. I mean, it's like I learned a ton because me and Tim are going back and forth, like, what do we do? Because we knew what we wanted, but we just didn't know how to do it with the equipment.
Right. So we just helped the player with her natural biases. So she wanted to swing the putter faster from a further distance, but was fearful because of how heavy it was. And it would be like this moving tank, and then her distance control was dreadful. But then she could get really close. She could get into a more of a technical feel where precision is really important from, let's say, 6 feet. And she could just kind of guide the putter accordingly. And she could feel like she's confident making putts. But anything that required movement, she probably felt way too much head weight. And so we just removed that from her without changing the head, without changing the build of the putter.
Yeah, like the total weight of the putter changes the feel. I mean, that's happy to report that last week was pretty good. It was progress. So we need a big week this week. But yeah, we won't go into any more than that because I don't like to jinx it. I'm big on karma. But we're moving in the right direction.
It's super fun that there's a lot of ego with the instructors, and the fact that you guys kind of collaborated with me has been really cool. And the fact that you two can collaborate together to make a player better, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. That's why we're in this.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's credit to Tim. He has sent me so many players because he teaches so many great players and has his trust in me with putting. And I can't thank him enough, but it was cool when he told me, he's like, yeah, I reached out to Shawn. I'm like, awesome. Like we both kind of learned something because again, it's a free flowing of information and it's not about us. It's about helping the player. I think these players are playing for a living. Like we're not doing anything. We're just trying to make sure that they have the best tools,
I say we're just trying to solve puzzles, right? It's hard to solve a puzzle by yourself, right? You don't see many people doing puzzles by themselves.
No, it was super cool. All right, so let's move on to, you sent me some great topics. Actually, before we get to that, I don't want to miss the Instagram post. I backtrack here, okay, because I'm schizophrenic. But a girl you're working with that plays at Georgia, Kate Song, I thought it was super interesting because you really went into some great detail of kind of what you did with her. And I think it would be worth bringing up. And if you guys aren't following Shawn on Instagram, you're missing out. But he's got some great posts because you type a lot of stuff that's like really, really helpful to the process that you go through. So talk a little bit about her, and you can share whatever you want about her, but that was a cool lesson.
With her obviously if someone's coming to see you, they're struggling, they're not in a good place. We have to figure out what is the problem, what is the solution, and then what's the long term. I don't want to say we can all lay a quick fix on something. We can all tell them what to do. But if they buy into the process of becoming better, there's all aspects in putting that we have to pay attention to, whether it be my distance control, my green reading, my preparation. What am I doing to become a better putter rather than just winging the putter technically sound? So with her, when the technical stuff, we kind of isolated better posture. We got her into a better putter, that something that was fitted to basically her eye and her posture that she could repeat in a solid, fundamental way, because we want consistency. And then we followed up with, okay, how are you going to train this?
Just to interrupt you there, talk about posture. What are your preferences, or what do you consider? How do you know what good posture is for her?
Well, obviously, our hip joint's too far behind the heels, right? And so now you have this big, rounded posture, and it's going to create a lot more arc for her. So we had to get her a little bit more balanced. And a lot of times I have players basically try to take their middle fingers and touch the top of their toes. That way they're in a decent amount of forward bend, and they're really, really centered with a little bit of knee flex, if you can kind of picture that. So if you drew a line down the line, it's basically from the laces of their shoes, it goes through their knees and it goes through their elbows. And their symmetry is really, really good. I got another picture I haven't posted in a while, but I've got a player he's just turned pro and so forth, but his posture and setup, that's all he works on. And so he has to be really symmetrical, if you will, how much forward bend versus how much he's in the back. So I want that putter, the grip of the putter, to be right through the sternum all the way up. So those are preferences. And obviously I don't mind like I said earlier, I like the lead wrist to be in a little more ulnar than radial. And then obviously if that works up through the forearms, great. Really, really solid foundational piece from a center position. And then we start from that. And then how can we really swing the putter? And then kind of using the top of the fulcrum, whether it be the sternum or the back of the neck, and how that moves and operates, then that puts the energy in the hands and so forth.
Kate had a little bit more knee flex when she started. Is that correct? She was sitting down, which is very typical of what we see, right? People try to get a little squatty. And
juniors got their favorite putter, and it's 32 inches, and they grow an inch, they grow 2 inches, and this is their favorite putter, and they're not willing to change it. I think we changed the length just a little bit.
You went shorter, didn't you?
We did. And then we started talking about, we did a little bit of green reading. I have to look at my post.
Yeah. You want me to read it for you? I got it right here.
Yeah, give it to me.
Here it is. So one was getting in ideal posture, consistent setup routine, making sure the putter fits. She was using a putter that was too long, weight back on her heels, and her eye alignment being altered, which is kind of what we talked about. She's left eye dominant. That's where it kind of got me curious about your dominant eye deal. Center shafted putter eliminates the offset bias. Her arms were too pinned to her sides, which basically I call getting trapped, which makes her twist more and tilt her upper body, and basically makes her move her body too much and not swing her arms. 2 was getting the correct rhythm and pace, which matches her natural move. She tends to move the putter slower under pressure. That's curious. Elaborate on that.
Okay, so there's a couple exercises that I'll have a player do, and it's a little trick. So I'll put a golf ball where they set up, and I'll put another ball on their kind of right in line with their trail foot. And I'll ask them to hit the back ball as hard as they need to think they need to hit the forward ball. So if you can kind of think about how fast the putter would have to move back to hit the back ball. Are you with me there?
Yeah. So he hits the back ball going the other direction.
Yeah. Try to visualize it's probably about 6 feet.
Yeah.
And so I want you to, whatever amount of energy you think you need to hit the forward ball, I want you to hit the back ball. And what happens...
Gosh, I'm stealing that one.
What happens is that they barely touch, like the back ball moves like 6 inches.
Yeah.
And then the forward ball runs across the green. Like it's...
Oh, I love that.
Like, no.
That is so good.
So what they end up doing is like, okay, now we hit the back ball 6-7 feet, and she realizes, oh my gosh, I have to start the putter faster to actually make the putter swing in more rhythm.
Yeah.
Because
coasting, I was cruising, by the way. I wasn't coasting. I don't want to steal. Yeah, John Sinclair called with the wedge whip thing that he used to do coasting, but you were close. Cruising is good.
Yeah,
you're on the right track.
Well, good. Well, so a lot. That's like my first, and to see what their rhythm is and what they're thinking about. I've never thought about how hard I have to hit this first ball. I just do it, but I have to hit that back ball the same distance, and they don't realize how much energy and what moves. And then you'll see the hands start to activate. You'll see the face fan open, and then they realize, if I just lock in here, I can move and have better rhythm with my shoulders. And so that's like a protocol in a lot of my putting processes.
When they do it correctly, how far does the back ball tend to move for a 6-footer?
Yeah, it's pretty darn, I would say it's probably 75%. So normally it's 4 or 5 feet back to a 6-footer. It's amazing how...
It's kind of symmetrical. That's super cool.
And especially when you start seeing like 20 and 30 footers, you move the putter a little bit further back, how much more flow they have. And if you just film their stroke and you film the way their hands move, it's like night and day different.
Dude, that's gold.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I'm going to continue to read your deal.
Number 3.
Yeah. So you improved, got the putter moved a bit faster. Putter length helped. So we talked about intuition and aim point green reading. You teach aim point now?
I've taken so many aim point classes. I'm not to say I'm certified. I don't even, but
that's fine.
I know aim point.
It's okay.
I don't do any clinics.
Yeah.
I'll teach a filtered version of it, but
intermediate target / areas such as a penny allowed her to free up her process.
Yeah. And again, this is maybe even a cultural bass player being really focused on the line rather than an area. And I'm giving them a way out. Right. So goes back to kind of the cone in putting. Like there's multiple lines with multiple speeds that can go into the hole. And that cone, I want you to be aware of. Like it's not a straight line to the center of the cup. There's multiple ways the ball can go into that hole. It can go in slow. It can go in fast. And if you match that up with speed, then we can read the green a little bit better. And when I say intuition, I think we all have. I always trust your intuition. When you come up to a putting green and you like, oh, this thing breaks right, go hit it. I mean, don't overthink it. Your intuition is going to be right more than you'll ever know. And who knows? Maybe it doesn't break right. And you pull it.
But the law of probabilities is probably going to be in your favor, though. Right. So that gave her some freedom to kind of go through her process of like, okay, I'm picking an area. I'm going to try to hit it over this spike mark or this discoloration in the grass, and I'm going to hit it with decent rhythm. And then, she started to kind of realize that the outcome is still uncertain, but my process is certain. And so then we start to feel a little bit more success because she's taken away the outcome, if you will. Yeah. So the last piece was lastly, I don't think this was a typo. Lastly, we got her to trace the line and move the putter. It's like me like posting on Instagram. The putter in a seamless motion. Kate would look at the target and back at the ball and be still for nearly 5 seconds before pulling the trigger. And I think this is really, really critical. And you're working on moving and reacting faster. Like talk about that. That's a huge piece, I think, to good putting is reacting instead of thinking at that part of that phase.
Right. And I mean, this comes from like Vision 54 stuff. Not to say I'm certified, not to say anything, but you borrow and pick and choose. But like, I will literally, almost every putting lesson, I will time my players. And that time I watch how long their putting process was and then how long they stared at the target. And typically the weaker putter stares more at the golf ball and less at the target. And they're looking at the line, they're doing all the right things, but then they get over and they get locked and they start looking at their putting stroke. You see their eyes going back and forth. They're trying to do all the correct things and you wish them well. And then they get up and what do? They take the first quick peek at the ball and then they go back to the target and they go back to the ball and they hit it. They didn't really hold the target in their perspective. They're not even thinking about their target. Like the target's secondary. The primary is the ball, right? And so they're so focused on the primary, the ball, than the target. And so what I wanted her to do is spend more time looking at the target and less time looking at the ball.
Yeah.
And so when she got up, she put the ball behind. She knew she was in a good setup, and then she would trace the line. And I think like Cam Smith does this, I kind of trace the line of the speed of which he thinks the ball would go into the hole, and then trace her eyes back to the ball. And as soon as she comes back to the ball, she's in motion, hitting it.
Yeah, it's called the quiet eye. I think I don't know where that came from, but it's like, it's
cool.
Yeah, it's really seeing things in real time and then being more like Aaron Baddeley, right?
Yeah.
Once the eyes are back to it, like let's react and fire.
Right.
Really good.
And again, that's how in tune to the target are you? Like how focused are you on the target rather than the ball?
All right. So great stuff, man. Let's transition. We've got a couple more things points to get to. This is great. Player development. I think I'm big on this, and we're all kind of as top coaches, sort of big on it. But what's your philosophy on that? And because the other thing was coaching elite juniors, and I think it goes hand in hand, right? It's like, how do we train kids or college players? Because you have a lot of both, and then just share with us, like, what do you do? Like, what's kind of your structure, maybe of your programming to cultivate that?
Well, first of all, when I take on a new student, I've been questioned by the fact that I'll do at least 90 minutes to 2 hours with them. And the reason being because I want to get to know them. I want to know, and if they can, I don't want to say if they can handle me. It's both interview process, right?
Sure.
Can they handle me? Do they like who I am? Do they like who I'm working with? And so that's kind of like a new student, but also to kind of see their goals, see what they're trying to, what are they trying to do? And, what are they trying to accomplish? And a lot of them just don't have a plan at all. I mean, they have no clue on how to practice. They have no clue on how to get better. They spend a lot of time, looking at an Instagram post or a YouTube video of, some really good instructor or some great golf swing, and less time looking at how can I get better. And so we kind of really prioritize that when I take on a new junior, whether it be, hey, listen, you've got speed, which is great, and I want to harbor speed, but you also have no control. So we're going to spend a lot on face control. And so that would be like the theme of everything. Mm-hmm. So we'd scale it to pitching, chipping, face control. We'll do whatever it takes, and we'll try to keep it into that sphere, if you will, of we're only working on face control. And then whether it be ball flight, whether it be, changing swing length, just to be able to control the face, and he have an idea or she have an idea of how to do it under pressure. And then those are our building blocks. So with a brand new player, beginner player, I mean, we do like an op 36. We start really close to the hole, and we teach them, really the concept of the game of scoring, just on the green and 2 putts. And, maybe it's 2 shots and on the green and 2 putts, right? And we just kind of process the scoring aspect to it. But for the better player, we get into scoring really, really quickly.
Yeah. How do you do that? How much are you spending on the golf course? What's the percentage of the technical versus, one of your topics was coaching versus instructing. I think this kind of falls into that genre of the difference, right? When do you transition, and then what's the difference, and how do you separate those?
Yeah. I think there's times where you have to, I need to be coached. I need to be told, what do I need Like last night, I had a great phone call with a student. He's up in Illinois, and I had to put on my coaching hat. He struggled. He's talking about his swing, and I never talked about his golf swing. I talked about him as a person. I talked about his mindset. I talked about all the work that he's been putting into. And I was speaking not as a father figure, but like as a coach. Like, this is your job. You're playing college golf. You are employed by the school. This is your job. And like, I was having some hard truth, and I'm not going to go, all right, well, why don't you send me a video and we can talk about where your lead wrist is at the top, or, whatever it can be, and where your pelvis is at the impact. And, I won't even go near that unless it's necessary. And, there's some videos, but that's the instruction side.
Right.
Like, I think the instruction side is, okay, you're going to the doctor and you're going to get analyzed, and this is your well-being, and then you need to go see a physician or a PT. I mean, like, let's say I've got a bum shoulder. I need to go see a doctor. What's wrong with my shoulder? He might say, well, dude, you need just tons of PT. And I'm like, okay, cool, great. I would have to that's like the instructor / coach. And if you can play those roles, I think you can serve your player really, really well, because sometimes they need more coaching than they do instruction. And I think some of the best things that you can do for a player is to try to tell them, like, you're good and the golf is hard. And the more you can kind of relay that to them, the harder they're going to work, the more they're going to realize that I am not practicing, long enough and hard enough and isolated enough. Like, I love slow motion stuff, and I'm not doing my job as a student well enough, so I need to do it. And then from a player standpoint, it's kind of just changing roles. But it's very relationship, right?
Yes.
I did this in a golf talk a long time ago, and I think instructors can get the bad rap of being transactional. You're paying me for a fee, which is great, and I'm going to serve you time and knowledge. And then we're done. And then you're going to rinse and repeat for the next 4 or 5 hours, depending on your schedule. Sometimes it's 10 hours a day. But when you put on the coaching hat, it's relationship. It's you have a buy-in. You want the player to do well. It's just like you and Tim, you guys are both coaching your player and instructing her, simultaneously.
Right.
But you're also trying to, like, hey, at the end of the day, this is about her succeeding. And she's chosen us to be her guide in this journey. And we have to take that with a lot of privilege, I think.
100%.
Especially the lead player.
Oh yeah, it's
and do whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of. They're playing for a living. It's a lot of pressure on us. So we're losing a lot of sleep on solving the problems. And it was great to bring you in to hopefully put another good piece into the puzzle.
That would be really cool if she does something special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're gonna
OptiVibes.
Yes, I know. Right? They need to sponsor the podcast.
An online store.
They need to. If they hear this, somebody needs to read. They need to be a sponsor of the show. But yeah, it tested out because she came to see me after because she saw Tim and then she saw me. Yeah. Just wanted to give her the checkup and like what I think it was helpful for her to go, for me, this is working, right? Everything, the checkup was good. Yeah. And that gave her confidence to go forth and go and do her job, right? It's just such an important part of what they do. You mentioned slow motion swings, which is something like deep practice is you probably know, from the talent code is like something that I'm really, really big on. Go deeper into, because I know how I feel about it, but it's interested to hear how you feel. Like, why is that important? And then how does that help us to change patterns, right? Because I think it's a huge thing, not for just the member golfer out there, but just the elite players seem to understand and get it better. But I'd love to hear your take on that.
It's how we learn, for number one, right? I can read Spanish. I just can't speak it, right? So,
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
So if, I'm not fluent at all, but I can read it and I can enunciate it, but I can't speak it. So the assumption that we can go through our learning process at a faster rate, it's absurd. And we're familiar. So a lot of times I tell them your speed is familiar. So if you feel like you're doing the same speed, you're just doing a familiar motion. You think you are actually doing what you're supposed to do, but the only way to accomplish that is to slow it down and to feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And then we can build off of it. So right now I need you to be at what we'll call gear 1, where they are, let's just say they're going through P1 through P10 and they're going in segments. Okay, then we're going to reduce some of the segments and we're going to try to go, straight to P4 down to P7 all the way to P10. And then we'll take those out and we'll go to gear 2 and we'll start taking and subtracting. And before they know it, they're a little more fluid if I'm playing around with the language stuff. But at the same point, that's what I have to convey to them. It's like, you're learning a new language. So if you don't slow down and articulate what I'm trying to get you to do with your body and your movement, it ain't going to happen. So we can speed it up once we're familiar with the new motion. But don't think that the minute you got this, you want to go into normal tempo, because that's not going to happen under pressure.
Yeah. Me and Butch was on this past week, and he mentioned doing slow motion swings, and he's like, we have that same similar, philosophy. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I tell my students the bad news is there's the good news and bad news. The good news, when you do it slowly, that you figure out you can actually do it. The bad news is now that you can do it, you got to go practice it and you got to practice it slow, right? It's like, but most people don't have the patience to do it slow long enough. I call them 40%ers, right? That's just to throw a number, because we always just go like, all right, I always say rate that 0 to 100 as far as the effort and speed and whatever they throw out. Then I go, well, your 60 needs to be 30 or whatever it is, right?
I mean, he's a brilliant instructor. He's been an influence in the Georgia section for so long. Danny Elkins, him and I used to have great conversations. And he goes, I want you to, you to have his TrackMan on. And he goes, I want you to do this 50%. You're swinging at 100. That means I want you to hit it 50 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And, the person will hit it at 90.
Sure.
He would just go, no, no.
Yeah. It's like, it's perfect.
Miles per hour.
They don't get how slow that actually is.
But again, I think that's who we are. I think more in the Western world, we want really quick self-gratification as soon as we can. We want to see results by tomorrow, because that's who we think we are. And we don't realize how long it actually takes how to change patterns and to do it successfully. They don't realize the time it takes. And you can go to, the 10,000 hour rule or whatnot. But a lot of times I'll have players do 2 to 3 correct swings and then they can hit a ball. And at least I tell them, like, hey, listen, 3 times out of that one hit was correct. Whether or not it was the golf shot. So, if you hit 100 golf balls, I know you did 300 correct swings, regardless of how many were correct when you actually hit the golf ball. And that's the importance. So I'm a big advocate of them knowing, and I like them looking, and then I like them being solely focused on the ball and feeling. A lot of times I'm saying, you got to learn by feel than sight. Quit looking at where your hands are at the top. You got to find it. You got to learn by feel.
Do you video them like when they're doing the practice swings? That's typically what I do. Yeah. To show them that they can do it and the feel. Like I say putting, making the bridge a little smaller between feel and real, but do you do that as well?
Oh, yeah. And then, you break it down like, oh, man, you're really good at lead arm parallel. Let's just stay here. Something happens in transition that we're just not ready for, right? You tend to early extend, or you tend to get the club 2 up behind you, but you stay right on top of it at lead arm parallel. So we're going to hit a ton of balls this way. And then I totally call the driving range this is the gym. This is where you train, right? You don't see NFL players going full speed on their practice field. They're going slow. They're learning the plays. They're counting their steps. They're training, right? So if you can train on the practice range, then you can get better. And then you can go play. And I want you to play and be a kid. Go play. But if you're on this range, you're training. Really try to install that kind of mentality, like, hey, I'm training. Right?
Yeah, love it.
So,
who's your best college player? Is it Luke?
Well, Luke's graduated. He's on the Canadian
Is he on
tour.
Canadian now? Okay, about time flies.
Yeah, I've got Will Moreland. He's a junior at Furman.
Okay.
I got Sarah M. She was a freshman at Vanderbilt. Got 2 at Augusta State. trying to think how many.
You got a lot of players,
not to say
man.
so many, but
No, it's good.
yeah, Will has done really well. We got a couple of guys at Kennesaw State that bring the heat. They got a lot of speed. They just need to get better around the greens. And that's, trying to unpackage that and trying to help them out with, 125 ball speed. And they think they can just terrorize the golf course with the driver. And, they're not very good from 40 yards. And I think I think that every player that has speed, that's what happens.
Yeah. Who's your best professional right now that you're working with?
Luke.
Probably Luke. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any guys on the big tour right now.
Gotcha.
But I got some, Luke's in a good mindset going into qualifying school. And I think he's more mature. He's seasoned. He knows how tough it is. And he's got really solid expectations that he knows what to I'm going to win it. No, this is, second stage is just like a Canadian Tour event. I just it's a top 10 finish, and that's what I need to focus on, just like I did all year. But, I need him to shoot, he goes out and can shoot 20 under in 4 days so many times. It just needs to happen on a big stage, and we're good.
It's a race to 20 every week, man. That's what I tell my guys. And it's like, you got to shoot 5 every day, and you get 7.
Yeah.
That's great. It's just money in the bank, but it's unbelievable how accurate that is. This episode of the Golf Guru Show is brought to you by our new partners, Astruzi. Listen up, coaches. What I'm about to share is different than what you've come to expect from the Guru. Normally, I'm the one asking the perfect questions to tease out the secrets, tips, and lessons learned from the best and brightest in our industry has to offer. This time around, I want to share some perspective. You're a business owner, right? You're a solopreneur. You're the founder, CEO, admin, sales, and marketing department. Like you, I often daydream about a world where these no longer consume our valuable time and energy. All of this takes us away from high-value time in the lab developing our players. If some days you feel like Bill Murray from Groundhog Day and your business is slowly sending you into an early grave, well, thankfully, I can say from personal experience, relief is only 5 minutes away. And I know you have 5 minutes. Coaches, if you have a Gmail account, an iPhone or an iPad, have your own LLC, constantly switch between 4 to 5 different services to run your business, charge at least $70 per lesson, or deliver at least 15 hours of lessons per week, then pay close attention because I'm talking directly to you. Astruzi is a business management platform where you finally offload all those wasted hours in admin tasks and get back to doing what we love, coaching your players, nerding out on ball flight laws, and about a million other things you would prefer more. If your business would benefit from 37% net new revenue, Astruzi is for you. If you struggle to build accountability with your players and dream of staggering 71.4% swing analysis viewer rate, Astruzi is for you. If you want a platform that protects and amplifies the decades of experience instead of allowing players to window shop 5 different coaches only to choose the cheapest one or the cheapest option, Astruzi is for you. If you have no idea where to begin, Astruzi is for you. I personally have an account and can vouch for the value that Astruzi delivers. The download link is in the show notes, or head to astruzi.com to download the app. When you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk to your last name so they know that the Guru sent you. Go to astruzi.com today. Tell me about your kids. Are your kids playing? You had one topic about being a dad. I don't know if that was for me. Parenting and coaching a golfer.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to lean on you a little bit because, your son's playing college golf and he's been under your wing and tutelage and watch you grow as a very knowledgeable instructor and, someone that's been an influence in so many young people's lives that, how does managing his expectations and you managing your own expectations of him. Oof. It was kind of like, hey, I need some fatherly advice because, and not to say I know we all know what not to do because we've seen those parents. Yeah. But my son he's taken an interest this year with the game. He's got a nice little swing.
How old are your kids?
Jack is 12 and then Phoebe is 15. Okay. So Phoebe's she's my tall volleyball player. She can swing it. She can hit it. She hates it.
It sounds like my family. Yeah, exactly. My daughter's a little older than Nick, and she could have been really good and then just didn't really have the drive. And then Nick, kind of kept with it.
Yeah, she'll come to the range and just stripe it, and then go, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm bored. Can I drive the cart?
Exactly.
And you just, okay, I love you. But yeah, so yeah, Jack he's just taken an interest. He's playing in his middle school. He's in 6th grade. He's playing in his middle school golf. And, it's still new. It's still, he doesn't really know how difficult it is and what the road is. But again, at this point in his time, I mean, he hasn't even matured into a young man to kind of like take advantage of height, length, and strength and all that. So he's just learning some baseline skills, chipping, pitching, putting. I mean, his technique is solid and fine, but like, how do you go from, changing that parenting hat and being a parent and also trying to coach and tell him what to do?
Yeah. So you're coaching him.
Yeah. And in a very subliminal way, if you will. Like, hey, what do you think your ball position's do you think it's good? Yeah, it's too far forward. Okay. And I'm not directing. I'm just trying to lay in these little nuggets that he starts to question and then asking me for advice. So I know it's kind of a little psychological experiment, but I'm allowing him to explore that it's his own. I'm not picking practice times. I'm not picking instructional times. I'm not saying, hey, you're going to come see me at 9:00 on Saturday morning, but hey, if you're struggling, let me know. And, he'll come and you're like, I can't hit a bunker shot. Okay. And then we'll talk. What club are you using? What kind of shot do you think what does it look like? And then I have a window of opportunity to kind of guide him and to coach him. That's
a good start. Gosh, I should write a book on this. I mean, probably more of what you shouldn't do than what you should do because I've experienced it all.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I mean, the podcast just turned in
I did.
in another direction. Golly, how can I give you the best advice in 2 seconds? In a nutshell, I coached him all the way up through. I mean, I've coached him since now, but we won't even get into the last part of it. But just as where your kid is right now at 12, Nick kind of got serious at probably about that time, 10 to 12, where he was playing football, and it got to where I love to watch him play football, but it got to where he was missing big golf tournaments because of his football schedule. And we never told him to quit. He's just like, I got to do golf because he was so tiny. He was he wasn't going to be a middle linebacker at, 100 pounds. So that's when I would say he got kind of serious and started playing more tournaments and then up through the CGA stuff. And I'd say I'll just give you sort of our learning moments, right? So my wife would be much better at this because she's our media. She's the referee. We'd have meetings. We literally would have meetings when we would have tough days. 90% of the days that we'd work together were really good. What we discovered, and this again, getting feedback from him, was because I was teaching so many juniors at that point that were playing against him. Yeah. He would say, Dad, you're not treating me the same way you're treating the other kids. They're getting hours and 2 hours of your time. Yeah, I'm getting 15 minutes in between lessons. That was a big eye opener for me. I'm like, totally get that. So then that's when we started actually scheduling time. We'd schedule an hour, at least an hour minimum of every week, where I would put him on the books and he would know when to be there and we would actually work. That's when we sort of developed. And again, I think that depending on where your kid is, how serious they are as far as playing, that's a big part of it. And then the other part was he wasn't being a very good student, right? I mean, it was it goes both ways. You're not listening to your dad because he hears the dad voice, not the coach voice, right? Yeah. So that's the difficult part that never stops. We would schedule the lessons and I would literally verbalize when he would come into the lesson and say, okay, I'm putting on the coach hat. And he would have to confirm that, okay, I'm putting on the student hat. And we would go to work, right? So the hard part is when I'm at the events, after a round or whatever, to be the dad versus the coach. That's where I struggle.
Yeah.
I want to go straight in on what was going on 14, what were you thinking about? Talk me through it. So I learned over the years to not do that. I mean, Dr. McCabe has been in my son's work with Dr. McCabe for several years. And like, he taught me like, you got to be the parent, like, don't go in like just, hey, where are we going to dinner? And like, let's go. So that was a big learning moment, because he would take him at least a day after a big tournament to process what he did. And then he would come to me and go, you remember on 14, like when I hit this shot, this is what I was thinking. Then I can be the coach. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like that, that's, there's a lot more to it, but like that was probably our first sort of mediation. And my wife was brilliant at like getting us together going, hey, what's going on? Like this is when he was getting 12, 13, 14. He's starting to get recruited by colleges, and there's a lot of pressure and people are, and he's different. Like he's going to be viewed differently because you're a top coach. You got to understand that, right? He would always say that he didn't feel like he had more pressure on himself because I was his dad, but he does. It's just not, it's unavoidable, right? It's like he felt like he was letting me down when he'd play poorly, right? In which I hate that just broke my heart when he would say, he's like, oh no, it's not, that doesn't bother me, but it's just the way it is, right? So I don't know if that helps at all, but I mean, that was part of it. There's a lot more to it.
No, I mean, I know. I mean, being a son whose dad taught him growing up, I always felt that hovering relationship of like, holy cow, here's my dad. He's watching me play. Like, all right. I better tuck in my shirt. I mean, there's just small things. I already start, I remember doing. It
was weird because he didn't care. Like a lot of, and I've talked this to parents, like some parents, the bad parents, you typically would put too much pressure and they would be there and like they wouldn't perform well, right? He wanted me there because he understood that I could help him because I would see him play. Like that's a different, and he would even tell you to this day, he's like, I never put any pressure on him to play golf. I could care less if he played golf. And that was one of the few things that I probably did well. Yeah. But when he said he's all in, I'm like, okay, this is the deal. And he knew, like, he saw me working with great players and like, this is what it takes. Like so he was never afraid to work hard. He was always, basically bragged on him because he was the hardest working kid I ever worked with. But it's just such a fine line. It's a fine line. It's and even to this day, he's in college and he's in his 5th year and we're still battling with that line of being dad and coach.
I can understand that. Those are things that I see myself I watched him play yesterday and I'm like, what in the world are you doing? And then I'm like, hey, can I just, if anything I can do, and this is something that I don't know, maybe a brief God moment spoke to me and they're like, can you just watch it through the lens of a dad for at least 30 minutes?
It's hard because it's not how we're wired, dude. It's not like this is our job. It's like we see it. Yeah, it's like we can't help ourselves. My wife, she's like, you just can't help it. Our big thing is like, fix your face. Because I'm just like, my wife's like, fix your face.
That's my wife all
there
the time.
There it is. Yeah, it's like, that's her. Just like, I'm not, what do you mean? I'm not doing anything. She's like, oh, it's written all over your face. Like, I'm like, I'm trying to be the best parent, junior golf parent, but it's not really, it's not easy.
And I think you said something we're oblivious to because we are so focused on doing our job. I'm very focused on the time that I'm with a student. And sometimes those students are very, very good. And your demeanor with them and your professionalism with them and your excitement for them is so good. And then you don't realize your son's watching it and you don't have that same enthusiasm or that same amount of energy. And like, oh my gosh, I've already failed at that,
that you're going to do them over and over. It's hard to separate and you don't. Like, it'll get better as he gets older though. Trust me, it'll get better.
Yeah. Luke came in and I think we spent like 3 hours together and we were just talking and we tried some things and it was a lot of conversation, a lot of just exploratory stuff. And we were laughing and then we were talking about other things. And then we got to work and then we went on the golf course. And, my son watched the whole thing and he goes, so cool. I want a lesson like that. When can we do that type of lesson?
But here's the thing, we still have that advantage because they've got he needs to be watching Luke and how he respects you and how he treats you. Because trust me, it goes both ways. And you can interview
So
you can
good.
interview my son next time and me like, yeah, I mean, he's downright mean to me, like, and we'll
Yeah.
get it. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, like we hug it out, and he's like, and the maturity's there now because he's like, sorry, Dad, I didn't mean that. It was, it's just the way it is. It's different. It's not the same when it's not your child, and it's just the way it is. But as long as you can kind of recognize that, like us, and then have them recognize that, hey, you got to act a certain way and you got to treat us a certain way as your coach. It goes both ways. It's not just, one way deal, then it works out. Yeah. And our relationship's gotten so much stronger over the years, which is great. Again, credit to my wife for doing a lot of the dirty work, but
Yeah.
and our relationship as father and son has gotten a lot stronger as well.
That's awesome. And you want your son to even from they want, not to say I want you to play golf, but I want you to understand what I do and appreciate what I do. And I love what I do. And if you can just get a taste of it and then enjoy it, I mean, that's kind of all we want as dads, right? Is just to get a little taste of how much I love what I do. And, I don't want you to be on, I mean, if you go as far as you want to go, great. That's on you. I just want you to realize that this is something that I love to do, and I love being around you. So it's interesting. I'm in the very much the honeymoon stage of being having my son wanting to play golf, and then the expectation of, well, he's the director of instruction at the Atlanta Athletic Club and all these elite juniors, and look at his record and look at how many people he's coached, and my son's always asking me like, hey, what did you win this? Did you win that? How far did you get here? Did you play in the Walker Cup? I'm like, no, I didn't play in the Walker Cup or the Ryder Cup. I said, if you played in the Ryder Cup, you wouldn't be in this house, buddy.
Yeah, the best thing was when he was younger, when I was coaching all the kids that was playing against him, and when he wouldn't listen to me, like, and he'd be practicing and playing with all these kids, he'd be like, dude, why are you not listening to your dad? Like he's got all these accolades or whatever. Like it helped, the credibility helped a little bit. And he's like, finally turned around and goes, yeah, I guess I better start listening to him because it's the way it is.
He's good. And again, we're just at the honeymoon stage, and I'm going to try to not test the boundaries, but really kind of look at, hey, I got to have some identifiers in my life to go, hey, have other really good instructors done this and have been successful? And, not to say your son playing at college golf, man, that's a great accomplishment for you guys. What a testament to your coaching and your parenting and all that. I mean, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super proud of him, and he's come so far.
And I'm sure he loves it. And no matter what he does with it, he's like, man, thank you for that gift, Dad. Thank you for the, 22 years of...
I'm still waiting on that one. We'll see. Yeah, no, he's very grateful. But yeah, I don't think he'll ever let anybody else know it until maybe later on. But we'll see what happens.
I get to, every Thursday, the Thursday at Augusta, my dad and I go to number 2, and we sit there we watch everyone play number 2. We've been doing it since he's actually moved down here. He's the starter marshal
at
awesome. The Atlanta Athletic Club. So we work together, which is amazing. And we get to go to the Masters on Thursday morning, and we just stay there and we watch every group, and then we go home, and we probably don't say many words, but every time I go, Dad, thanks for putting the club in my hand. We couldn't experience anything like that. Yeah.
You get it. All right. Well, let's dig into a couple. You got a little time for some personal development stuff?
Yeah.
Before we wrap up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you're big into fitness, and like, just give me an idea of like, what are the daily habits what do you think is important that makes you like successful, and what creates a good day for you?
I hate saying this, but it's kind of who I am, is that I just don't waste time. I get up at 4:30.
Wow.
4 days a week, and I go work out. I come home probably around 6 o'clock, and get everybody ready up in bed, put on some music around the house, and I get to work at a little after 7 and prepare for the day. And I stay there till probably 6, and I come home and I be dad to the fullest. And then every now and then I get to be a husband and sit on the couch with my wife and not waste the time to spend time just holding her hand. And, that's kind of what I do on a regular basis. So I don't waste time and worrying about what other people think of me. I don't waste time stressing about stuff. Probably my biggest habit that I have that I wish I could get is I want almost people to be, similar to me. And that's really hard. You know what I mean? Like to have a compadre, like, oh yeah, we're all in. And you're just not. I'm built that way. And I don't expect anyone else to be built that way. I'm going to do the hard stuff because I like the hard stuff. I'm going to do, when you start thinking about it, your time is very short. And then how well do you use that time? And whether it's relationships or whether it's your work ethic or whether it's, and I think I spend a lot of time wasting my assets playing golf, practicing, being solo, not being engaged with people. One of the reasons why I quit playing full time, like a mini tour professional, is I hated the person I was becoming. I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like who I was. There was a lot of soul searching there. And I felt like I was wasting a lot of time and energy, and I wasn't good to anybody. So I live by that kind of mantra, if you will. Like I want to every day be the best I can possibly be to the people around me, to the people that I know, to my family, and then just put that on repeat and see if it adds up to a life. Like one hole at a time.
Oh,
that's cliche.
It's brilliant. Like it's the simplicity of momentum, right? It's what I call it. And I've been pretty good with that. And then I've struggled really since I've been down here. It's been different, and like I got to get back to sort of getting back to, those daily habits, because it's just the little things that you do every day that make the biggest, I think, accomplishments in whatever you feel like is success, right? It's like how you make yourself feel to open yourself up to other people, right? What about your workouts? Give us what do you do? Like when you say workout, I mean, you don't have to go to every, like, what is, when people say they work out, I'm like, guys will go and sit at the gym for an hour, right? I mean, you get up at 4:30 in the morning, you're doing something.
I go to a gym called Iron Tribe. It's very CrossFit-esque. We're lifting stupid stuff over our head. We're doing handstand push-ups. We're doing pull-ups. We're running.
So stuff is like laid out for you when you get there. Is that, so that helps, right?
No, I mean, we have to build it. I mean, we build our bars and we do that, but there's a program already built and we do it.
I think that's so helpful, right?
You're doing it with a band of people that, are willing to wake up really early and go work out at 5 a.m. I mean, that's a unique personality to begin with. So you're already with people that are kind of like, I got you.
Yeah.
I'm going to sprint a little bit faster and I want you to come catch me, and it's kind of like, oh man, I did something today. As soon as I put my feet on the floor, I did something.
Got to get that back. That was when I was running marathons and seriously running for 10, 15 years. It was the same thing, right? It's just got more done before people would wake up than.
And you just feel accomplished. You feel complete. You feel like I did something not only for myself, but I'm modeling behavior in front of my kids. I'm modeling work ethic in front of my staff. I'm really kind of trying to push it to the fullest of what I'm capable of doing. And whether or not anyone notices, I don't care. I'm doing it for myself.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So, and then it's easy to sleep at night. So, I mean, it's...
Yeah, getting up at 4:30 is going to, you're not going to be staying up too late.
Yeah. I mean, again, and like I said, my guiltiest thing is putting I want people to, work like me, and that's just not fair. They're not built like me, and you're built like you, and you need to do you to the fullest. And so whatever your capacity is, try to reach it. And that's what I wish for my players. So if I'm not modeling that, I'm telling players like, hey, I need you in the gym. Well, you're not, coach. Well, okay, you're right. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff like, hey, why aren't you hitting golf balls? Why aren't you playing? Well, I've got a job and family and kids.
Yeah,
and
that's a different one. I think you can answer that one. Okay.
You can't, but we're not in the same role.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But at the same point, like, can I push myself like I'm trying to push my players?
So what are your fitness goals? Like, what do you, is there anything, or it's just more of a daily habit?
I have no goals. I have a badass dad bod.
Yeah, you do.
And so that's it,
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not trying to get chiseled. I have terrible eating habits. I like Tropicali beer and I like wine. I mean, I like it all, but in moderation, of course. Sure. But I just want to feel like I'm not wasting time.
Love it.
I know that's
it's an incredible like life lesson. I mean, that's perfect. What do you do when you're ever? I mean, our job is we're so invested in our players and our jobs. Yeah. Like, what do you do when you're stressed, or like, is there any other habits aside from working out that you do?
I go walk the dog.
Come on,
I go hang out.
That's it.
I go walk the dog. I'll go on their back patio and I'll listen to some music and just sit there and melt. I love music. I love just quiet spaces of just listening. And I don't know if that's meditation or
it's a form of, right?
A form. I'll go to rock concerts and, have those releases and so forth. I don't fish. I don't hunt. Those are habits that, I feel like I can get compulsive with that I would worry about, and then I have to watch myself on things like that, because if I really enjoyed it, I want to really do it.
I think, I think that's a common gene, right? It's like we're all compulsive, in our behaviors. In a way, and it's like, what do we turn our attention to is pretty important. So I get it. Yeah, you can only have so many hobbies.
Right. So I just have to watch out for some of those pitfalls that I put in front of me, and I just avoid them. Right.
Awesome. All right. So before you get to the last question, I've kept you a long time, probably longer than you thought.
No, this is good. This is great.
Anything else that you would want to talk about, or?
I mean, I'm a man of faith. I live by that. That's my first and foremost foundation. I feel like I try to model that as much as I can in my students. I want them to know, who I am and whose I am. So there's a lot of faith conversations that I have with some of my students, and not to get on, off-centered on that in terms of knowing my place and my role. But I have scripture written in my office. I have Bible studies at the club.
Great.
And I don't mind, not to say displaying that, but I want my people to know me by that. So I do live by faith, and that's a huge part of my relationship with my kids and my wife and my community and so forth. So
love it. Thank you for sharing that. You know what's coming. So what would you put on your billboard to get to the millions of people or billions of people around the world? It could be your Bible verse or quote or whatever. What would you put on your billboard?
My last name is spelled Koch. I mean, it's pronounced Koch. It's spelled Koch. And I think that is just something I was always destined to be as a coach. And once you're a coach, I think you're a coach for life. So some of my players who I've worked with that don't play golf anymore, I still want to know how they're doing. I want to know their lives. I want to, if they're having babies, they're getting married. So I want to be that presence in people's life as a coach. And I would be, if you want to coach, I certainly can guide you along the way.
It's awesome, man. You're the best. Keep doing what you're doing. And
I appreciate it, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been good.
So tell the listeners how they can follow you on socials and any websites you want to give out, or how they can get a hold of you.
I mean, I'm at the Instagram is Shawn Koch Golf, SHAWN KOCH GOLF, and then my website's the same name.com. A little bit of stuff about me in there. I haven't really updated. That's kind of a goal for 24. But yeah, I kind of flirt on more stories than anything on Instagram. Yeah. Kind of do a little more posting. You get sidetracked. You get a little bit away from that. Been off Twitter for a while.
X now.
More as a voyeur. X. More as a voyeur. Yeah. I mean, you can follow me there. And I mean, I'm at the Atlanta Athletic Club, and we definitely do work occasionally outside the membership. So if people are interested in coming to Atlanta, you can call me.
Absolutely.
And maybe I can help you out.
Very cool.
So
thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time.
Hey, I appreciate it, dude. Thanks.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Guru here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Shawn for coming on the show and sharing his incredible insight about instruction, equipment, and life that I know will help you become better coaches and also better people. I know I learned a lot. Make sure you follow Shawn on the gram and Twitter at Shawn Koch. That's SHAWN KOCH Golf. and give him a social wave and tell him thank you for the awesome interview and the awesome information. Thank you again to my sponsor, Estruzy. Make sure you go download the app and check it out, and make sure you add the asterisk after the name so we know that you heard it from the show. Very, very important. You can also follow and reach me on Twitter or X or Instagram at Golf Guru TV, and check out my website at golfgurutv.net. And then if you have any questions or comments on the show, just shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for all the shares. Please share it on your story. That's a big, big compliment. And then add an iTunes review. That would be fantastic. I appreciate that. This episode and all future episodes were produced by Joel North. Thank you, Joel, for your continued excellent work. And music was brought to you by Kevin MacLeod and Zach Mullett. And as I always leave you with, the Jim Rohn, RIP, my man, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I will talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening.